Walter T. Watts, SFP2. I joined the Navy Reserve when I was still in high school, age 17, in 63, late 62, early 63. Our basketball coach was a lieutenant in the Navy Reserve and laid it out for us, and it sounded like a good plan. And they and several of my buddies joined because we wanted to, because we knew we needed to serve our country, and we did. But a lot of them didn't and got drafted. Well, I'd already been wearing a uniform for over a year then, so it wasn't new to me. But and I played football, and so I was used to being on a team and taking orders and working as a team like that. So it wasn't hard. It was enjoyable. Great Lakes, Illinois, and I went there in the summer between my 11th and 12th grade year. Well, everybody in the Navy is a firefighter because that's your house, and don't think a steel ship won't burn, because it will. It's got a lot of paint on it and it'll burn. So that's the first thing you learn is firefighting. And then weapons, we fired a .22. Not likely you're going to need it on the ship. And it was great training, and enjoyed it as much as anything. We were in a barracks sleeping, and the food was good, but they didn't give you much time to eat it. You know, it was get in, get out, whatever. All the training was good, and it was getting you ready for the real Navy. It made me feel proud that I lived in the USA and that I was in the Navy. My uncle was in the Navy, and he was at D-Day and lived to tell it. I had an uncle in the Army that lived to tell it, but it made me feel proud to put that uniform on. After boot camp, I went back to high school for another year, and then you know, and attended reserve meetings on the weekends, and then went on active duty, and I served active duty on the observation island from October of 1964 until October of 1966. This is like Christmas all over again, you know, seeing something you hadn't seen in so long, you know, like that. But it was a great ship to be on. Really, really good duty. We went around the world. I spent Christmas in Hong Kong before. Not necessarily because I wanted to, but it was good. It was good. They made it good for us. When I first joined the ship, well, the Navy sent me to Patrick Air Force Base because the ship was en route to a mission, whatever, and it was at sea. And so I had to wait at Patrick Air Force Base for a couple of weeks. And then they flew me to San Diego to join the ship. And then we sailed on to Hawaii, Guam, Philippines, just everywhere in the area. We were there, you know, and it was join the Navy and see the world. When I first went aboard, I was just a seaman. And everybody that comes aboard has a little duties to do, and some are potato peeling. But my job was the chief's compartment. I kept the chief's compartment clean and kept them coffee for 3 months, and then I went to the shipfitter's shop, which is pipe fitting and metalsmith, and from there, I worked there, and my dad was a plumber, pipe fitter, so that's what I wanted to be, was pipe fitter. And so then I made rank up, and when I was got off the ship, I was a second-class petty officer, and had made first-class petty officer, but I would have had to went to California for a welding school, and my mother was real sick and afraid she was going to pass away any time, and so I had to go back home. Went back to Reserve Center, but it was I learned a lot on the ship. and made good rank and had a lot of experiences. And it was the last ship that President Kennedy was on before he was assassinated. And that was a big deal. Actually, I was still in high school. I was standing on the gym steps when I heard it and couldn't believe it. And knowing, and then as soon as I got assigned to this ship and found that out, then it meant even more to me. And then this book I've got here, I got all of those pictures in there of President Kennedy and everything, his time on there. And I think it was about 6 days after that when he was assassinated. It was a low time in the USN. Something should have never happened. It was a goodwill shipping for all the foreign countries. You know, there's let people know, you know, what the U.S. was about and everything, you know. But I think they did a little mission to see what was going on in the rest of the world to report back. And but I have I got to experience a capsule recovery, re-entering from outer space, parachuting in. We were invited guests and were on site for the pickup. Well, we were just invited guests. We had to lay back, but the carrier and their crew picked it up. But it was amazing to see that, because you see it on TV and stuff, but it's not like being there. And when it broke through the clouds and was coming splashed down, you know, like that, and not just any Navy ship gets to see that. You know, we were special to be able to observe that like that. It was great. That has been 60 years. I remember when I was standing in the Winter Patrick Air Force Base when my daughter was born, and Gemini 10 was launched. They launched at the same time, but I watched that launch right when she was born. It makes you remember it forever, you know, and we've always told her the stories, and she remembers that. And then we've also been downrange to be able to observe a submarine launching 8 missiles, one right behind the other on a full moon night. And they were just lined up like they were going to hit the moon, and then gradually just went out of sight. But most people will never see anything like that. Either one of those two things, the average person will never see that. It makes you proud to be from the USA. And not any other country could accomplish that. We were the only ones that could accomplish those feats like that, and it was amazing to see such things like that, to be able to see that, because the average person did not get to see that. There is a countdown, an alarm goes off, and you have to be at a certain place on the ship or whatever. But when it went off, it'd shake that whole ship whenever they launched the missile, whatever. But it was exciting to be a part of it, and then see the pictures later. You know what it actually happened, because we're all below decks, you know, and you have to be at general quarters whenever they launch. But it was the only surface ship in the Navy that had missile tubes of that size, whatever. The same thing were on submarines. I think that was the ship they developed them on for the submarines. They pull around and they tell you to stay clear of the deck. Nobody topside except for the people involved, whatever, when they bring in that crane in there and drop those missiles down in the tubes like it, and everything, smoking lamps out. No, I didn't smoke, but nobody smoked or anything like that, or do anything, and I was sure for no fires whatsoever, you know, around until all that's secure. Everything's secure air when they did that. It's just amazing that all that stuff worked like that they could have all that stuff. And this was in the 60s. Just imagine what they got now. But it was something else. It was a great experience. Something you couldn't buy. I was in A Division, and that was all of engineering, whatever, which the engine room, they were engineering, but they were separate from us. We did everything outside of the engine room, whatever. We had all the duties to check the draft of the ship every day before we were in port, to make sure, we were staying at the level we were supposed to be at. We stood all the watches on all the equipment, all the air conditioning, checked the lifeboats every day and cranked them to make sure they worked. And when we were coming to port, my job was to run the anchor windlass, which is really a big winch where they would wrap the lines around, and depending on how tight they pull on them, how hard they pull, and bosun mate would tell me what speed to run the winch at. But that was my job coming into port, was to run the winch. They call it anchor windlass, and I did that, so I was involved with that. But when we were leaving port or coming into port, we always lined the rails in uniform and stood at attention while we were going out to sea or coming in from sea. We always did that. And it was a sight to see when we come through the jetties. And all the wives, if we've been gone a long time, when we would come in, all the wives would be on the jetties waving at us when we were going out or when we were coming in, whatever. And the town of Cocoa Beach was glad to see us back. Sometimes we would just go out and stay all day and come back that day. And then sometimes we'd go for 2 or 3 months, and we have went as much as 6 months. And then when we went into dry docks one time for repairs, and they lifted. We had a high flight deck for a helicopter, and they would take your car with you. They would lift the car onto the deck of the ship and tie them down, and we'd go to Norfolk to go in dry docks, and they'd take them all off. And then on the weekends we would drive back to Cocoa Beach to visit the family, the ones that couldn't go, and then go back over the weekend. And we still lived on the ship in dry docks while they were doing repairs to it. It was just a normal work day, standing watches just like we were at sea. But there were ships everywhere and sailors everywhere. Like we could go off the ship, and if we just wanted something different, there'd be a little get-out truck come by every day, and you'd go down and get you a hamburger, hot dog, or whatever you wanted, taco or whatnot, and then go back on the ship. But we ate good. But we had a ship store. If you wanted something extra, candy, peanuts, what have you, you could buy it in the ship store. But it was really good duty. I've been through the Panama Canal a few times. That we only had like a foot on each side. The ship's so wide and the canal is so narrow that we barely had a foot on each side, and it was. You've seen pictures of it, seen it on TV, but it was something to actually do it, to be in there and then go through those locks, and then the lakes in between, and then go up through the other locks like that. It's I guess you can buy that trip now, but back then you couldn't buy that trip. You were in the Navy or something if you got to do that. It's just amazing that they were able to build that. Like that, you couldn't believe that they built that, but it cost many men their lives building that, from the mosquitoes, of all things. But it's unreal that they could build that somebody had enough vision to build that like that and make that work like it did. And we sailed over on the West Coast, I've been to Hawaii for about 3 times. It was to think about what had happened at Pearl Harbor in Arizona. It's just unreal to see it in person. How could that have happened? Everything. But there was ship after ship after ship in there, and but it was a good vacation. But still, we're away from home, and whatever, but it's something to see. Matter of fact, I went and visited Hawaii. We actually were there when the pandemic hit, and we're just leaving and didn't know it. We almost got trapped there when they locked everything down. But we went, and the hat I got on came from Arizona, and this shirt came from Hawaii. Made in the USA, Hawaii, USA. And we've been to Guam, Philippines, Hong Kong, like that. You know, we'd stay over for a few months and then come back. And I've been to Portugal, Spain, Bahamas, just wherever they told us to go, that's where we went. It played a big part in the U.S. in our defense, because it toured the world and reported back to the government, you know, what was going on in the world. And it observed a lot. And it was goodwill, plus it observed a lot to keep everybody at the Pentagon informed of what was going on in the world, to be able to function and stay ahead of our enemies. But it was something everybody should experience it. Oh, the chow was real good. It was better than the average ship. I've been on some other ships, and that ship was better than average. And there were some civilians on that ship because of our missiles and being based at Canaveral Space Center right there. There were several civilians on there, so it was a choice duty ship. And but we ate real good, and the accommodations real good. Air conditioning, clean white sheets every day. It was really good. Well, when we crossed the equator, we met King Neptune. And that initiation was a lot worse than any football initiation. But they made shellbacks out of us. You're a pollywog if you hadn't been across the equator, and when you cross the equator, you're a shellback after the initiation. And they make a man out of you right there. And well, you dread it for a few days knowing it's coming, but yet you want to do it. You wouldn't miss it for anything, you know, because you wanted to be a shellback. But it was tougher than any football initiation, but we met King Neptune. And it was a great feeling afterwards, and we had a big party after it was all over. And it's you're a shellback, and I've got hats with shellback on it. People look at it, what's that? You know, and you have to explain it to them what it is, but any other sailor knows what it is. Later, after I was off the ship, they did have a lot of harassment from Russian ships and things, and checking them out and things like that. But I actually never experienced it, whatever. But we had submarines around us all the time. We even pulled a transducer behind us so that we could stay in contact with the submarines without blasting it all over the airways. It was just it was pulling, you know, and nobody else could hear us other than them doing that like that. You know, how can you launch a missile through water? That was amazing that somebody figured out how to do that and like that, and not put the fire out. Well, it's not burning when it comes out. They blow it out with compressed gas, and then as it clears the water, then it lights off and launches to wherever they're sending it. Well, let me tell you about the time that I was in a tornado on the observation island. And that sounds weird, you know, a tornado on a ship. But we were in port, and we had given our secure berth to a submarine. And as the submarine went out, they were going to move us with tugboats back over to our normal dock. That was the secure dock. And we were one deck down working, and we knew we were moving, and all of a sudden we slam against the dock, and you hear the pilings popping, and we go over on the list. And so we run up to the main deck, opened the hatch. There's a foot of water on the deck. We slammed it back, you know, didn't know what was going on. And then finally they came on the sound system and said that a tornado had just hit us. It had come from inland going out to sea. And we were just fixing to go on Liberty, and they were putting the gangplank up, and it was real high gangplank. It was a two-tier system, and the milk truck was out there, and a tornado set the big walking crane all the way down the tracks, took the milk truck, took the gangplank, went all the way to the end and broke all the cables and dropped the boom on the crane. And didn't hurt anybody, but scared everybody. And we didn't have a way off the ship because the gangplank was gone, the crane was broke. But they put a bosun chair over the side, and we went down one at a time in the bosun's chair, and went over and got in our car and went over on the beach where my wife was, and she didn't even know the tornado had happened. And she said, "What are you talking about, tornado?" But as we were driving out, we had to zigzag around on the road because they had sightseeing helicopters and trailers for the offices and stuff, and it had strode them everywhere. The helicopters looked like bugs with their wings pulled off. It was laying out in the middle of the road. And that was just experience most people never get on a Navy ship. In a tornado, they think you're crazy saying that tornado hit you like that. But that was an experience that you'll never forget that. Of course, they wanted me to re-enlist. They wanted me to go to California to a welding school, and I wanted to go, but my mother was in bad health in Alabama, and I couldn't get that far away from her at that time, and so I went back to the Reserve Center and took care of my mother, you know, helped take care of her. But I would have loved to have done 20 years, but it just wasn't the right time right then. My mother meant more to me than that, so, and I served my time, so I went back to the Reserve Center and did 12 years. Well, I got a free vacation in New York, for one. We got on the ship in Jacksonville, Mayport, and went to New York and sailed right in by the Statue of Liberty and Bell ships and everything, and had a few days there, and then we sailed back down, and there was cruises like that we would take for our 2-week summer drill like that, and there's a couple of ships like that, but that was the most memorable one, was the one to New York. I remember what they called it. They called it a tin can. It was a destroyer escort, and we would practice highlining the man from one ship to the other ship, or fuel lines from one ship to another ship, and then they would shoot the guns, and I caught the shells. And just like we're in the Army, in a tank, they had to catch the shells. Well, you had to catch them in the Navy too, and then throw them out the hole in the bottom, and they're rolling around all over the deck. And then right after gun practice, then all the bosun mates, they had to get out the paint can for all the chips where we threw the shells out on the deck and touch the deck up a little bit. Destroyer was like a bad camping trip. No air, not the best food, and small quarters, in a canvas bed rather than a nice mattress. No air conditioning. Whatever, it was tough. The sailors that served back during the wars, they lived a miserable life. Whatever, but they still did their job. Well, I went back to my hometown, Gadsden, Alabama, and I went to work at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, and I stayed there for 40 years and retired. But it was that plant had been there since 1929, and they closed it after 90 years when the pandemic came. And but it was good. The Reserve Center was right there in town, which later they closed that, and people have to go to Birmingham if you're in the Naval Reserve. But it was good having it right there in town, and there was a lot of sailors went through there, and a lot of my buddies went through there. Every young man should have to serve his country, and Navy is the way to go. I had kin folks in the Army. I had an uncle in the Air Force that I just visited over in Orlando, and he was a lieutenant colonel and flew, but he actually got to visit me on board that ship, and even he said we were eating good, whatever, but life's been good. He was actually from Alabama. He was born in Alabama, but his mother later moved to Miami. My grandmother moved to Miami, and that's where he started as an enlisted man, and when he retired, he was lieutenant colonel flying the big planes. And he had a family, and they live in Orlando now. But this life was good. Like I said, I had an uncle that was just enlisted in the Navy, and had uncles in the Army. And my dad tried to join the Army, and they wouldn't let him. They wouldn't take him. But so there was military in the family. When I came before, I really didn't see anybody that I actually knew by name until this time. And it was a guy, we had both wound up at Patrick Air Force Base waiting on the ship, and we both flew to San Diego, and went on the ship at the same time, and he was here today, and that was really good that I got to talk with him. He remembers he and I going on that ship that day, and when I went on that ship, a boy that had graduated school 2 years before I did and was in the reserves, when I walked on that ship, he was on that ship and said, "Hey, Tommy," and he said, "You just coming on?" I said, he said, "I'm getting off." He said, "I'm getting off today, matter of fact." So they just had pulled in port, and he was going back to Reserve Center. But really had good experiences the whole time I was in the Navy, whatever. And I stayed in the reserves for 12 years before I seemed like I didn't have time for it anymore. Should have stayed 20.